All right. Take two. We are live. My apologies for that who were just here. We tried to go live a moment ago and ran into, I guess, a glitch on YouTube's end with the screen sharing. But I did run through a test and we seem to be okay now. So, welcome for those of you who are tuning in or watching this after the fact to another video in my Neville Goddard lecture series. I am excited to share this one today. And for those who are maybe joining and did not see the last intro that I did, today's lecture is titled Wonder Working Power. This one is a bit more of an obscure one. Not a whole lot of people know about it, definitely compared to some of his more popular lectures, but all the more reason why I want to share it, because there are some incredible highlights and takeaways in this lecture, which is the entire reason. And if you are here or new for the first time to my Neville lecture series, we are here to just break down, go over his teachings, and I'm going to be reading through and sort of translating, if you will, sort of dissecting and helping you have a better grasp and understanding of what he is aiming to convey, because it is very easy to get confused. And we really do want to come back to the source material when possible. When wanting to understand the law of assumption, there's no better way than through the man himself. So I'm going to be toggling back and forth between sharing the screen and reading through the lecture, and then going back over what we read and sort of breaking down. If you would like to read along, or if you would like to read the lecture in its entirety later, I have the link to the transcript in the description box. And I definitely recommend, if you're somebody who likes to take notes, definitely grab a pen and paper. And let's go ahead and dive on in. Let's make sure we do it right this time. There we go. Now it's working. So this is titled Wonder Working Power, a lecture that he gave February 3rd, 1969. And Neville says, quote, "You have within you a wonder-working power. To understand this power, let us turn to the book of Joshua, where we are told, 'Wherever the sole of your foot shall tread, I have given you.' The Hebrew form of the word Joshua is Yad Vav. My apologies if I'm butchering the pronunciation, by the way. Correction, Yod He Vav Shin He, and it means Jehovah saves. So you see, Joshua is not promising another, but himself. Jehovah leads the dance of life. We are his dancers, yet his very self. For God and his eternal name is one I am. There is no place you can go and not know that you are. You may suffer from amnesia and not know who you are or where you are, but you will know that you are. So without voicing it, you are saying, I am. That is God. There is no place where God is not, and there is nothing that God is not. For if there is something, it has to be God." Now, starting out right away, really deciphering the importance of I am. This is something that we really want to have an understanding of before delving into more of the specifics of the law. This is everything. And I do plan on making more videos. I have made a couple videos on the topic of I am, but one that we really want to understand. And I plan on making more. And this is a perfect example of who you really are versus the ego self, the smaller self, whatever you want to call it, your conception of self, your self-concept. That is the garment that you're wearing. That is the role that you're playing, but that's not who you actually are. Because if you were to suffer amnesia and you were to completely forget who you are, everything, your memories, your conceptions of yourself, your beliefs, your assumptions, you would still be aware. You would still know that you are. You would still exist, for all intents and purposes. That awareness, that consciousness, that is God. So when we say, I am God, we're not referring to the ego. And I think that's where some people get uncomfortable and it feels somewhat blasphemous. The ego is not God. Like Missy Renee is not God. The awareness of Missy Renee, the one who is aware of Missy Renee and the thoughts and experiences that Missy Renee is having, that is God. But let's continue. There's definitely a lot more to dive into, but that's something that we want to take a note of. We have to understand the true self versus our ego self that we have been identified with and have been identified as for our entire lives. Now all things by a law divine in one another's being mingle. If you will take the idea of interpenetration seriously, you will find its possibilities are staggering. Everything in this world penetrates your brain. You penetrate my brain just as I penetrate yours. My apartment is several miles from here. New York City is 3,000 miles. And the place where I was born is 5,000 miles away. I know they are there, but if I accept the thought of interpenetration, then I believe they are also in my brain. This is where it gets important. If I desire to visit my island home in Barbados, but do not have the means or the time to go there, I can enter its image in my imagination by approaching it on the fiery chariot of my contemplative thought. I love his way of words sometimes. I have done it. I do not use this wonder-working power lightly anymore, because I know that after imagining my desire fulfilled, although I may forget it, I will be compelled to experience it in this world of shadows. Let me take a drink of water. This wonder-working power is to be used for anything you desire. It now penetrates your brain, and it is wherever you are. I know that Barbados is in the outer world, but I also know that I am all imagination. I know that God is man and exists in us, and we in him, that the eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. So if I, imagination, enter into an image I desire to occupy, no earthly power can stop that image from becoming an objective fact. Let's discuss this, because this is everything. When he talks about interpenetration, which I love that he's really using those words there, because it's being able to penetrate through the noise of the mind. If you're really able to capture the essence or the feeling in imagination, no earthly power can stop it from becoming your objective experience out here in the 3D. Doesn't matter what the distance is, it doesn't matter what the so-called obstacles look like, if it seems impossible, because we know and understand that, yes, this thing exists out here, but it also exists in here because we are all imagination. Your imagination is your creative power. That is God, for all intents and purposes. So we're learning how to use this creative power and not take it lightly. Really be mindful of what we are imagining and what we are, what we are penetrating, so to speak, what we are feeling and believing to be true. Let's continue. Let me see here. What is the secret that makes this wonder-working power operate? Feeling. Whoop, feeling. That is what makes it operate. Reality is controlled by feeling, as told us in the 27th chapter of Genesis. The central character in this chapter is the state called Isaac, who has two sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau is clothed in objective reality, while Jacob wears subjective reality as longings, wishes, and desires. When Jacob disguised himself as an objective fact, Isaac said, "Come near that I may feel you," to determine whether you are Esau or not. And when he asked, "Are you really Esau?" Jacob answered, "I am." So I really want to take a note of this because this is important. If you have been following my Neville lecture series, you'll know that Neville often returns to this, this story in the 27th chapter of Genesis, specifically with Isaac, Esau, and Jacob. Now, as a really brief rundown, Esau is the representation of your external reality. Jacob is the representation of your inner reality. That is your longings, wishes, and desires. It's the subjective. In this story, Isaac, the father, is blind and says, "Come near that I may feel you," to determine if you are really Esau, if you are really the objective reality. But it's really Jacob, dressed as Esau. Basically, what it's conveying here is that Isaac, who is you when you shut out your senses and you turn within, if you can clothe your subjective reality, your desire, in imagination and have it feel as real as Esau, who is the representation of your external world, you will receive the blessing, or it will become impressed and thus outpictured. Everything in the Bible is meant to be taken figuratively. It's meant to be taken in allegory. It's meant to be taken as it's not meant to be taken in the literal sense. And that's something that we want to understand. All of the people in the Bible are representations of states of consciousness. But Neville's also going to go into a little bit more detail. He references this story of Isaac, Esau, and Jacob often because this is where the Bible speaks on feeling and the importance of it. So let's continue, because he does a really good job in this lecture of breaking things down more simply. Put yourself into a subjective state. Basically, go into imagination. Then feel the objectivity of the state by giving it sensory vividness and tones of reality. Then deceive yourself into believing that the image into which you have entered is now objectively real. Do that, and you have entered the state called Isaac. And we are told that when Isaac once more saw his objective world, Esau returned and Jacob disappeared. Then he realized that he had been self-deceived, but he could not take back the blessing given to the subjective state. Although your objective world, your 3D world, denies the reality of what you have done in your imagination, that which you have subjectively assumed is on its way to supplant your objective world and becomes your Esau. You see, in life, you are playing the part of Isaac with your two sons, Esau, your objective world, and Jacob, your subjective one. So you're playing the role of Isaac, and you have two sons, Esau, your 3D, and Jacob, your imagination. Your subjective world may seem to be clothed in unreality, but when you enter into its image in your imagination and clothe that image with feeling, your subjective desire takes on the tones of reality. So this is important. Your imagination may seem to be clothed in unreality, but when you enter into its image in your imagination and clothe the image with feeling, your subjective desire takes on the tones of reality. What he's saying here is that what we imagine may seem to feel not real, clothed in unreality. And this is where we get stuck. It doesn't feel real. It feels fake. It feels like a fantasy. However, when you enter into that image and you can make it as objective and real as possible, that's when you're going to start to actually experience it, feel it real, first in imagination, and then inevitably in the 3D. By tones of reality, that means using your five senses in imagination, or at least the strongest of your senses, whether that's sight, taste, touch, hearing, smell, or a combination of those. But the more that we can make your imaginal act as objective feeling and as real as possible, that's what ultimately becomes accepted, impressed, and ultimately expressed in the 3D. This is how I do it. When I close my eyes, this world is shut out. So the 3D is shut out. And I, like Isaac, am blind to the outer world. Then I feel myself into the state of my desire. With my inner eye, I see it all around me. I sense its solidity. And when my five senses are awakened, I have the feeling of relief, knowing it is accomplished. When I open my physical eyes, Esau, my physical world, returns and tries to persuade me that what I did was not real. But having done it time and time again, I know that my desire is moving towards its objective fulfillment. So important. Take note of this. When we open our eyes, it's going to feel like what we just imagined didn't really happen. Well, it is going to feel like it really happened, but in the objective world, everything's going to look the same, right? That's what he means. However, we have to accept that once felt in imagination, with that degree of realness, it has no choice but to become outpictured. It has no choice but move towards its objective fulfillment. This is what I mean by wonder-working power. It is all within your own wonderful human imagination, for that is God. The promise to Joshua is God's promise to himself, for there was no one to play the part that is so uniquely you, but God. Having conceived a play which existed only for him, God, the director and author, became the actor. His name is I Am. Before I am known as John, Peter, man, or woman, I simply am. Clothing myself in what I would like to be, I am rich, poor, known, or unknown. Although my objective world denies the reality of what I have done, when I have felt the reality of my desired state, I have given it my blessing and cannot take it back. Unless we revise it. Well, we'll go into that later. The moment that which was subjective becomes objectively real to you. You have given it your blessing and cannot take it back. Clothed in the feeling of insecurity, your outer world, Esau, reflects that feeling. But when you clothe yourself in the feeling of being rich, even though it is subjective, watch, for as insecurity will no longer have your blessing to remain alive, riches will supplant it. Every state of consciousness is within you, for everything is God made visible. And all things, by a law divine, in one another being mingle. The moon is remote in space, yet it penetrates your brain. Therefore, it is in your brain. I can't take you with me to view the earth from the moon, but you can go there yourself. You can go to any point in space that you can conceive of by just imagining you are already there. Let's definitely discuss that point. Every state of consciousness is within you because creation is finished. What he's saying there is you have this creative power in which no experience is off the table. You can go anywhere in your imagination. You can have any experience that you want in your imagination. There is nothing that stops you. But the problem that we run into time and time again is that as we get older, as we become adults, we stop really allowing ourselves to imagine things that feel unreal to us. We limit ourselves to 3D circumstance. We put these conditions on the imagination, and we don't allow ourselves to really penetrate that mind, to really go to that state, to really occupy it in your imagination, because it doesn't feel possible, because it's not realistic. Whatever the reason, we don't allow ourselves to have the inner experience. And what we are learning to do here is have that inner experience. That's why it says also in the Bible, unless you become like a child, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Unless you learn to imagine like a child, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven or experience what it is you truly desire. Let's continue. And Neville goes on to talk about the story of when he was in the army, which is another story that he often shares. And I think the reason for this is because it's definitely one of his stories that seem impossible. It's one of the bigger ones that seem unreal. You have to remember, especially during World War II, people were not honorably discharged unless, something significant came up. It was very, very, very rare to be discharged like that. So he's giving this story often and giving this as an example to show that there's truly nothing that is off limits. All he needed was to go there and to plant that seed, to leave that impression, and he was able to be discharged. When I was in the Army, my commanding officer denied my request for discharge. His word was final in the world of Caesar, but not in the world of God. For that very day, I assumed I was honorably discharged and living in my apartment in New York City, 2,000 miles away. Sleeping in a little cot in the barracks, I assumed I was on my own comfortable bed. I made it quite clear to myself that I was not on furlough, but was honorably discharged and once more a civilian. In my imagination, my wife was in her bed and my little girl in hers. Then I got off the bed, walked over to the window, and looked out upon a familiar scene that could only be seen from there. I saw the Hawley Apartments across the way, as well as Washington Square. I walked through every room in the apartment, touching familiar objects, and then returned to my bed to sleep in New York City, as though it were a fact. Early the next morning, I saw a sheet of paper which resembled the application I had made. Then a hand holding a pen scratched out the word disapproved and boldly wrote the word approved. And I heard a voice say, "That which I have done, I have done. Do nothing." This is a vision that he had, essentially. Knowing exactly what I had done, I knew I was moving towards its objective confirmation, and no power on earth could stop it. 9 days later, the man who disapproved my application gave me an honorable discharge. I tell you, everything is possible to the individual when he knows who he is. You are the Joshua of the Old Testament and the Jesus of the New. And Jesus, your own wonderful human imagination, is Jehovah. He is your awareness. But as long as you see Jehovah as someone other than yourself, you will not apply this principle. You must be willing to give up all foreign gods, all idols, and return to the one and only God, whose name is in you as your very being. If you are trained in the Christian faith, you were taught to believe that Jesus was on the outside. But how can you put him to the test if he is another. There was never another Joshua or Jehovah. There is only God, the director of the great dance of life, whose dancers are himself. God plays the part of the bum and dances the dance of poverty. He also plays the part of a millionaire and dances to the tunes of millions, as every part is being played by God. Now everyone must act from where he is. Ask yourself, where am I? If I am God, where can I go? And God is not. If I make my bed in hell, God is there. If I make it in heaven, God is there. For everything penetrates me. I do not have to physically move. Simply by adjusting my thinking, I can move from one state to another. And I love how straightforward this is, especially for one of his lectures, because again, Neville can get a bit more abstract and obscure in his lectures sometimes. And I do love that he is very straightforward here. He often repeats himself, as we need reminding constantly. But it's important to note here, the story of him getting discharged from the army is an incredible one because he lays out in very clear detail what he did. He saw himself in his imagination. He was laying in his bed in New York City. He got up, he looked at the window, he saw the familiar scene of what he would be seeing out his window if he were physically standing there. He walked all over his house. He walked all over his house. He touched objects. He got himself as much as he could in that objective state. Even though it was his imagination, he felt it as real as possible. And that's what we mean by feeling. It's not the emotions, it's not needing to feel blissed out or euphoric. It's feeling it real and natural as possible. And we can utilize our imaginal senses for that. And even if it's not as vivid or as defined as our physical senses, we can definitely distinguish something that feels real to us and something that doesn't in imagination. And I always try to come up with examples for this. And one that comes to mind when it comes to feeling it real is, take, for example, a memory. Memory of what you had for breakfast this morning. It doesn't even have to be anything crazy. But as you recall what you had for breakfast this morning, you may even be able to remember the taste of it. You may be able to remember any smells, where you were sitting, the scenery, if you were in your kitchen or living room or wherever. But as you recall that memory, it feels very real. Now, contrast that to something that is, to you, a complete fantasy. You'd say that you were somewhere that you clearly weren't. Imagine that you were in Japan yesterday and you're just kind of fantasizing about it. That's not going to feel anywhere near as real. So the distinguishing thing here is that realness. And we can tell the difference. But if we concentrate, if we practice really getting those tones of reality, or just really practice exercising this imagination muscle, you are going to be able to imagine something to the point where it feels like a memory. When you come out of it, it's going to feel like something that you really did just experience. And that's what we want to aim for here. Because feeling really is everything. As Neville talked about earlier in this lecture, and as Neville talked about over and over and over, the one thing that he consistently brought up was the feeling and the importance of feeling. Let's share this really quick again, because this is important. Let's go back up near the top. What is the secret that makes this wonder working power operate? Feeling. Reality is controlled by the feeling. And I emphasize this point over and over again because there are a lot of people that claim that you don't need to feel it real. You don't like feeling isn't important. And that, I mean, as far as the law of assumption is concerned, and as far as Neville's teachings, that is not true. Feeling is everything. It is the secret that makes it so your imagination actually becomes your creative power and you're not just fantasizing. Reality is controlled by feeling, not emotion, which is, I think, the big confusing part where people often get confused, but the realness of something, how natural it is, that sense of knowing, that intuition, that hunch, so to speak. That is everything. Neville's going to go into a different story here, also important. I remember one cold winter night in New York City. I was lecturing in a church off Times Square, where the usual crowd was in excess of 1,000, but because of the cold and snow, there were only about 200 in attendance. My first book had just been released, and that night maybe 50 copies were sold. And since I had run the presses on 5,000, I was eager to get the book in distribution. Excuse me. Because of the storm outside, that night I spoke of the warmth of Barbados, the palm trees, the odors of the tropics. And when I retired, I felt myself in my mother's home in Barbados. I listened to the movement of the leaves and smelled the tropical atmosphere. Then a cable came saying that mother was and I should return home. Within 24 hours, my wife and I set sail for Barbados. I had put myself there and had to fulfill my imaginal act, even though it was an inconvenient time for me to go. So I do not treat my wonder-working power lightly. That one is the point that we definitely want to break down. Neville's story here is giving us a warning. We do not want to take this power lightly, because here, Neville was not intending to go to Barbados. He was just imagining a warmer environment because of how cold it was. It was a brutal winter storm. He was freezing, and as he was going and getting ready for bed, he imagined being back home in Barbados, and that warmth. Well, because he felt that and he felt that real, he got a notice saying that you have to come home. You know, he received terrible news and had to go home. So what he imagined had to fulfill itself. So we don't want to take this lightly. We don't want to dwell on things and ruminate and feel into things that we don't want to experience. Period. And so we need to be incredibly mindful, because sometimes it can be cathartic to get really pissed off at somebody in your mind, or it can be really, you know, we have almost that guilty pleasure of indulgence in these angry thoughts and imagining something terrible. Well, your imagination is not going to distinguish, and it's not going to be selective. Whatever is felt as real is going to be outpictured, no matter what. So we really, really do want to be mindful of this and mindful of what we are imagining and what we are giving feeling into. Let's continue. When I ask you to adjust yourself to a certain state, I mean for you to feel it is real, for reality is controlled by feeling, once again. The day will come when feeling will modify, or even void, that which you think are the laws of nature and science, and you will discover they are not so at all. That is very true. The wonder-working power is all within you and can be operated consciously when you know who you are. If you get down on your knees and pray to an external God, you do not know this power. Whether you are in a church or a bar, God is there. And wherever God is, that place is holy. A bar is just as holy as a church when you are there knowing who you are. It does not matter where you are or what time it is. You can adjust your mind and make anything real through feeling. Although your objective world, will deny its reality, the state you entered subjectively is moving towards fulfillment. We are always imagining, although totally unaware of what we are doing. That part is worth highlighting and is so true. We're always operating this law because we're always imagining. You're never not imagining. You're never not internalizing something, whatever it is. We are just completely unaware that we are doing this. So we have to become aware. It could be operated consciously when you know who you are. If you pray to an external God, you do not know this power. Another way of putting that is if you are giving credence to outside circumstances, if you are, letting the outside dictate and determine things, you do not know this power. Wherever you are, God is there. And be it a church or a bar, does not matter. Yeats once said, "I will never be certain it was not some woman treading in the winepress who started a subtle change in men's mind, or that a passion, because of which so many countries have given to the sword, did not begin in the mind of some poor shepherd boy, lighting up his day for a moment before it ran upon its way." uh, Basically, everything was first started in the mind of someone. Everything first started in the mind. Even the grand things, even the big things, it all started first in the imagination, is what that means. Someone in prison, feeling abused by society, can cause the combustion of the world by imagining getting even with those who placed him there. While those who did it think they are safe, not realizing that, although the man is in prison, he is God using his wonder-working power. If you know there is only God, who would you want to hurt? You would realize that no man could ever shoot another, for there is no other. There is nothing but God, the one and only reality. This is the Shema, the great confession of faith. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Keep this in mind, and you will never go wrong. If God is one, there cannot be another. I am the one body, fragmented, in order for the poem to become alive. As I gather myself together to rebuild the temple, which was destroyed when I deliberately shattered myself, the dead stones are made alive once more. One by one, each fragmentation returns to the same body, making it more luminous, more transparent, and more creative. For God is an ever-expanding creative being. Important to remember and come back to. God is all, God is one. There is no separation, nothing can be separated from God. Nothing is separate from you because nothing can be separate from God. There is no other. And why would you want to hurt somebody when you realize this? Knowing that you and everyone are one, is God. Hurting another is hurting yourself. Why would you do that? This wonder-working power is your own wonderful human imagination. That is God. Man is all imagination, and God is man, and exists in us and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. A Christian calls the imagination Jesus. A Jew calls it Jehovah. Tradition claims Jesus and Jehovah are idols, but God's true name is I am. Believe in the human imagination, the only true God, by consciously using your wonder-working power. Where can you go that you are not imagining? No matter where you are imagining or aware of being there. A newborn child does not know who he is, where he is or what he is, but he knows that he is. That is God. He is your wonder-working awareness, the wonder-working power of imagination. I hope you take me seriously and learn to consciously believe in your inner penetration. Everything penetrates your brain, or you could not be aware of it, be it good, bad, or indifferent. You don't have to take a train, a boat, a car to go anywhere. All you need to do is adjust your thinking. Affirm, I am possessing it now, and persist until you feel the relief of possession. Then go about your business, knowing that in a way you know not of, you'll be led to the fulfillment of what you did within yourself. You don't have to consciously determine the series of events you will encounter. They will simply unfold in your world. You may meet a seeming stranger. Others may appear. And upon reflection, you may even give them credit for your success. But they were only playing a part, as all things, by a law divine in one another's being, mingle. Others penetrate you and you penetrate them, for we are all one. If someone can play the part necessary for you to climb on that rung of the ladder, then he will do it without his knowledge of consent. Do not think of individuals, but of what you want as an end. Do not think of individuals, but of what you want as your end. I'm talking namely and especially to the SP crowd. Go straight to the end. Do not worry yourself. Do not concern yourself with the series of events, how they would need to unfold, how they're going to unfold, what needs to happen, who's going to show up. We will never consciously know that. We will never consciously know what the bridge looks like or how that's going to unfold, when it's going to unfold. Not our job. We only know that it must, because that is the law. Everything that has been internalized, impressed subconsciously, accepted subconsciously, has to reflect. And it may seem like other people are showing up and helping you achieve this goal or achieve this end, but they're playing the role that they need to play in order to see your fulfillment, in order for you to get to the end. So always, always, always remember, do not think of individuals, just go to the end. And specifically, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? What experience would imply fulfillment of that desire? Let's continue. I think we're getting close to the end here. Shape your life wisely by becoming aware of the desire you are shaping in your mind. For without desire, there is no power in life. Your power line is I am, while your desire is the light bulb. Just as it is impossible for a light bulb to give off light when it is not attached to the power line, so it is with you. You must attach your desire to your I am for it to illuminate and become objective to you. Basically, you must become that desire. You must feel that desire. You must attach to it in order to experience it. Because everything is made alive through God. Give lovely gifts to all you meet, for everyone is yourself pushed out. Take a noble concept you would like to experience and adjust your thinking to it by feeling you have moved into its fulfillment. Give it reality through feeling. Look at your world from this point, the point of your end state. Then open your eyes, knowing that although your objective world denies it, you have given your desire its right of birth, and nothing can stop its fulfillment. Read the 27th chapter of Genesis carefully, remembering that all of the characters spoken of there are personifications of states within you. As Isaac, you always have two sons, your present objective world, or your 3D, and your present subjective world, your imagination. The story tells you how to clothe yourself with the subjective desire through feeling until it supplants its objective brother. That is how you move from one state to another until you reach the state called Jesus. Then the story recorded in the Gospels will fulfill itself in you, casting you in the central role. Only this experience can save you from this world of Caesar, for you are redeemed from within yourself by recreating the story of Jesus Christ. Now let us go into the silence. That last paragraph especially, he is referring to, we're moving through states until we reach the state of Jesus. That is the knowing of who you really are. Call it enlightenment, call it whatever you would like. And then the gospel fulfills itself in you. That is the promise. Now let us go into the silence. So again, what I love about this lecture is he goes into details, but he's very concise and to the point. And he reiterates the importance of feeling. Once again, it's feeling that, that gives everything its power. Like, that is what leaves impressions. That is what becomes expressed, is what feels real. It's what feels natural. So we practice clothing this subjective state in that realism, giving it that sense, the tones of reality. And then when we open our eyes, it's still going to look the same. Everything's still going to look as it did when you closed them. But you're going to have that knowing that what you have felt must be objectified. It must be expressed. Like, that is the blessing that you gave it. So that was Neville's lecture, Wonder Work Power. Again, delving into the topic of imagination and really getting clear on I am God. God is all imagination. And we are all God, because God is one, and nothing can be separate from God. No one and nothing. And use this power wisely. Be very, very careful and mindful of what you are doing and what you are feeling and what you are assuming in your day-to-day. Because we're always imagining. Morning, noon, and night. Never stops. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's lecture. I hope you had some good takeaway from it. I thoroughly enjoy everyone's feedback, and everyone has been wonderful about the series so far. If you have a recommendation, or if you have a lecture that you want me to go over in this series, definitely be sure to drop a comment. Let me know. And in the meantime, everyone have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, much love, you guys.